I want to dive into this. This is a huge uh, focus of mine is just the difference between a promise and a goal. I feel like so many times people get so attached to goals and they're like goal setting, New Year's resolution, and what's your goal today and what's your goal this week? When I think goals are kind of crap, I'll be honest. Like I found that a lot of people, and maybe if you're listening to this, you disagree. Uh, I'd love to hear your guys' feedback and comments as I read this book. But what happens is a goal is, in the Merriam-Webster's dictionary, there's the definition of goal is the end towards which effort is directed. That's it. The end towards the end toward which effort is directed. Okay, so we have a goal. And then the definition in the same dictionary of promise is a legally binding declaration that gives the person to whom it is made a right to expect or to claim the performance or forbearance of a specified act. So if you're to ask yourself, like, which one would you think would be more likely to happen? The promise. And the promise is something that it's like a covenant. It's an agreement between three people. Yourself, someone you choose to make this promise with, meaning there's like a reciprocant to a promise. And this is a huge part in the difference between a promise and a goal. And then the third one, which most people aren't probably thinking of, is their audience. And the audience could be an antagonist. It could be your community that's watching you, rooting for you, the cheerleaders, your social media fans, your company in and of itself. And what ends up happening is when we make a promise, there's going to be some kind of consequence, pain, reward associated to where if we break this promise, it might be shame. We might lose relationships. We might lose out on a lot of respect, clout. Where if we don't hit a goal, 99% of the time, there's no repercussion. Like it's just straight up like, hey, you didn't hit your goal. Like who cares? And you 9 times out of 10 don't care. And so, a lot of like what I want to talk about is there's these 3 major problems that I look at when we talk about goal setting. And I'm not saying don't have an end in mind, don't have a destination, don't have benchmarks in life that you're trying to accomplish. I'm just saying make them more of a commitment. And the 3 main problems that we run into with goals is the first one's negotiation, the second one is false dopamine, and the third one is there's no plan. And there's a statistic that says 92% of 17 million people that try to quit smoking each year fail. 95% of people who lose weight fail to keep it off long term. 88% of people who set New Year's resolutions fail at their attempt. At 10% of the population has specific, well-defined goals, but even then, 7 out of 10 of those people reach their goals 50% of the time. So you ask yourself, it's like, okay, that's the statistics. Are goals meaningful then? No. I mean, we're talking the 90 percentiles. I have a goal to stop smoking by the end of the year. It's like, okay, how many years have you said that? So it's funny because I had a goal to get a 6-pack, and I still do by the end of this year. And I was about 185 pounds my whole life. And, a lot of times I've tried to lose weight. I've talked about dieting, and it's like, oh, I have a goal to do a meal plan. I have a goal to do this. I have a goal to have a 6-pack. I have a goal to look good. Like, there's been so many times that I've done that, but it's like, the reality is it never happened. And it wasn't until I made a promise, not to myself, but to my administrative assistant. And I said, I promise to pay you $1,000 every time I eat sugar between Monday and Friday. And I remember the first time I had lemonade, I had to Venmo her $1,000. And I contemplated, I'm like, well, I didn't even know I had sugar. Like, I totally spaced, I forgot. But then it's like, no, but I made a promise. It wasn't the goal about the 6-pack. It wasn't a goal about the sugar. It was simply, I made a promise that I said, if I eat sugar, I promise to pay you $1,000. And there's been many times since then that I've paid her $1,000, and she gets excited, obviously, those days, but she has nothing to gain. She has no skin in this other than she collects money. So unfair to her or unfair to me, maybe not. Because many of you guys are like, why would you do that? Do that deal with me. But I look at it and I go, no, I'm doing the deal with myself, because a goal does not have that deal. So when we look at the reciprocant of one, the promise is made with ourselves first. So I promise not to make or eat sugar between Monday and Friday. I could very much so lie. I could very much so fib. The other day I had a marshmallow and I had a bowl of cereal and I kept just caving. It was a Thursday night. And I look back and I go, interesting. I ate sugar and I'm not going to tell Mallory. And so 2 days later, I'm feeling this insane guilt trip because I like to be very honest with people and I like to be very honest with myself. It's one of the things I've really tried to work on. And I got to the point where I was like, it's not worth my integrity. The $1,000 isn't worth breaking a promise, not to her, but to myself. And when we set out to sell a certain amount of sales, or when we try to commit, or maybe we give our investors a promise and we say, hey, I promise to hit this revenue mark, or I promise to sell this much, or I promise to go out and work all the hours. That's a different conversation than I have a goal to sell this much. And it should have some different meaning. And you're not going to take a promise lightly. I think a lot of times people, they take a goal too lightly. Why? Because they artificially spit out whatever imposters' wants are, meaning like society imposes these goals that they feel like validated from by being like, oh, I'm going to sell this much. I'm going to make $100,000 because that makes me feel validated. But they never really internalize why they want to make $100,000. They just throw out a number because it feels good and someone else is asking for a number from them. And they didn't really put much thought to it. And so, I look at it and I go, there's a thing called leverage. And if you study coaching, and as I consult and I work with a lot of people, I try to get leverage, which means what's the pain associated and what's the pleasure associated if we were to not or accomplish the goal, right? And I thought about like different business leverage factors. And so I listed these out. And the first one is pain. The pain factors is letting someone down, getting beat by competition, losing money, losing people. A lot of times you lose these relationships, legal repercussions, cost of not changing, repeated results. Everybody hates insanity when they're just doing things over and over again. You have overhead or expenses. If you don't grow, a lot of people forecast growth, and so they tack on a lot of overhead now in anticipation of profitability, relationship cost. So if you start to say, let's weigh and put an actual tangible value to the pain associated if I don't hit my goal or I don't hit my target, and actually like remember that on a constant basis. And then also associate the pleasures. So the business pleasures or the business factors of leverage could be, change in salary or payout. So it's like, hey, I can finally start paying myself more. That's been something I've started to actually like taste for the first time in 3.5 years in business. It's like, oh, I'm hitting revenue targets where I'm actually going to pay myself. Like this feels really good. And then change in profit margin, stress level. I'm actually getting to a point where we're hitting our targets where I'm like, oh, I can take a weekend off and not feel bad. I can be, I'm going to go disappear for a week. And, like stress level is a huge one. Freedom to do other things, time excess, ability to conquer other projects. So it's like, one of the projects that a lot of you guys don't realize that I'm focused on is the door-to-door association. So we're working on a lot of really cool initiatives with sex trafficking education, certifications, public relations, a documentary we're fundraising for. So if anybody wants to get involved on a committee, it's going to be a very, very global effort and takes a lot of work. So that's stuff like if I can't free up and hit my targets and hit my revenue marks, then I can't go give back and do something cool like that, So another one would be the effect on those that you love, like, meaningful friends, meaningful family. They see this energy getting sucked out of you. Passive income opportunities could be a big one. Like you could have, different side hustles or real estate now coming in. You're building like actual wealth if you hit your sales targets and your goals and you budget right. Clout in the marketplace, obviously authority, recognition, things like that. So there's so many pleasures you could associate for hitting your sales numbers or hitting your business numbers. And so I'm sure there's a ton of more. And I think it'd be smart that as you set a promise, you actually associate, okay, if I hit these promises, I'm going to accomplish this, right? So